I've lived in Harlow my whole life, which is either something you say with pride or something you say like a confession, depending on who's asking. It's a small town in the kind of way that feels permanent, like it was always going to be small and always will be. 2 traffic lights, 1 grocery store, a diner that's been under the same family for 3 generations, the kind of place where everybody knows your truck. I never minded it much. Some people grow up desperate to leave. I wasn't one of them, at least not in any serious way. I had Della, who I'd been with since junior year of high school. I had Russ, who I'd known since we were kids, throwing rocks at the creek behind his mother's house. I had a decent job doing finish carpentry for a local contractor. Life wasn't exciting, but it fit. The storms were just part of Harlow. Every Tuesday night, right around 3 in the morning, the sky opened up. Hard rain, close lightning, the whole thing. It'd be over by sunrise, and the day would come up clear and bright like nothing happened. I'd grown up falling asleep to it. Della thought it was romantic, in that way she had of finding something charming in whatever was in front of her. Russ said every town has its quirks and left it at that. I never questioned it. Why would I? It was just weather. The week I stopped sleeping well had nothing to do with the storms. Work had been brutal, a big renovation job that kept running into problems, and I was bringing the stress home with me in a way I couldn't shake. I'd lie down exhausted and then just stare at the ceiling while my brain ran through everything that still needed doing. Della slept fine beside me. I envied her. So on that particular Tuesday, I was already awake when the rain started. I watched the ceiling for a while, then gave up and went to the living room. I sat in the dark and listened to the storm and tried to let it do what it had always done when I was a kid, which was make me feel small in a comfortable way. The world outside was loud and wet, and I was inside and warm. That used to be enough. I wasn't looking for anything. I just drifted to the window, the way you do when there's nothing else to look at. The street outside was empty and slick, the puddles catching the orange glow of the streetlights. Rain was coming down heavy enough that the far end of the block was just grey. That's when I saw it. There was a figure walking down the middle of the road. Tall, pale, moving at an unhurried pace that had nothing to do with the weather. No umbrella, no raincoat. Just walking, steady and deliberate, like the storm didn't apply to it. I remember thinking it was a person at first, someone who'd had too much to drink, someone in a bad situation. I almost went for my phone. Then it stopped in front of my neighbor Chet's house. Chet was a retired machinist in his late 60s who walked with a bad knee and complained about it constantly. He'd been talking about moving down to Georgia to be near his daughter for at least the 3 years I'd known him. He had a whole plan, had the boxes, had the number for a moving company written on a notepad on his kitchen counter, or at least that's what he'd told me once. The figure stood at his front door for a moment. Then it went inside. No key, no knocking. It just went inside. I stood at my window for a long time after that. I don't know how long. The storm kept going. The figure didn't come back out, not that I saw. Eventually, I went back to the couch and sat there with the lights off until dawn started coming through the curtains, and then I made coffee and tried to decide whether I'd actually seen what I thought I'd seen. I saw Chet the next morning when I was backing out of my driveway. He was standing on his porch with a cup of coffee, looking out at the yard with this calm, settled expression I'd never seen on him before. His whole body was different, relaxed in a way that seemed foreign to him. He waved at me. I rolled down my window. I asked him how he was doing, and he said he was doing just fine. Best he'd felt in years, actually. Said he'd been thinking about it, and he'd decided he was going to stay in Harlow. That Georgia plan was never realistic, he said. His daughter was busy with her own life. Harlow was home. I asked about his knee. He looked at me with a mild, pleasant expression and said it wasn't bothering him much anymore. I drove to work and didn't say a word about it all day. The following Tuesday, I didn't even try to sleep. I turned the lights off and sat in the chair by the window at 2 a.m, and I waited. I felt like an idiot doing it. I also couldn't have stopped myself. The storm came in right on the schedule, that low rumble building from the west the way it always did, and within 20 minutes it was pouring. I sat in the dark and watched the street. It came from the north end of the block. Same tall figure, same steady pace, same complete indifference to the rain soaking it from head to foot. I was calmer this time, which surprised me, and that calmness let me look at it more carefully. It was too thin. The proportions were slightly wrong in a way I couldn't pin down. The way it moved wasn't quite the way a person moves, though it was close enough to almost pass. It went down a different block that night, but before it turned the corner, it stopped. It was maybe 40 feet from my house. It didn't look at me. It didn't do anything. It just paused for 3 or 4 seconds, like it had registered something, like it knew I was there. Then it kept walking. I didn't sleep at all that night. I tried to talk to Russ about it on Friday over beers. I told him what I'd seen, kept it simple, didn't dress it up. He laughed before I even finished. Not a mean laugh, but the kind you do when something makes you uncomfortable. And laughter is the easiest exit. He said I'd probably seen some weird drunk guy. He said I'd been stressed and my brain was doing what stressed brains do. He ordered another round and changed the subject so smoothly that I almost didn't notice he'd done it. That night, I told Della. She sat on the couch beside me and listened to the whole thing with her head tilted slightly, the way she did when she was actually paying attention. She asked a few questions. She didn't laugh. She said it sounded genuinely scary and she was sorry I'd had a hard week and that we should probably both try to get more sleep. She kissed me on the forehead and went to bed. The next morning, she didn't mention it. Not at breakfast, not when we were both getting ready for work, not when I brought it up to see if she would. She looked at me with a perfectly normal expression and said she didn't know what I was talking about. Not in a defensive way, in a way that was worse, like the conversation had simply never happened. I thought about that all day. I thought about it all week. By the following Tuesday, I'd made a decision I knew was stupid and was going to do anyway. I got dressed at 2:30 in the morning and went out the back door and stood in the yard in the dark. The storm was already building. I could smell it coming in, that electric charge that gets into the air before the rain arrives. I stood on the wet grass and I waited. The rain started soft and then got heavier fast. I was soaked within 5 minutes. I stood at the side of the house where I could see the street and I watched. My heart was going faster than I wanted it to. It came from the north again. Same pace, same terrible steadiness. I made myself stay still. It got closer, and I got my first real look at it up close. It was at least a foot taller than any person I'd ever stood next to, maybe more. Its skin, if you could call it that, was the color of old paper. Its face was a pale, smooth oval with the barest suggestion of features, like a sculptor had done the rough work and walked away. The rain hit it and ran down it, just like it would on anything else. That detail was somehow the worst part. It stopped on the sidewalk in front of my house. It looked at me. I don't know how I know that, given what I just said about its face, but I know it. The same way you know when someone across a dark room is looking at you even before you can make out their eyes. It stood there in the pouring rain, and it looked at me, and I looked back at it, and neither of us moved for what felt like a very long time. Then it walked past me, up my porch steps, and into my house. I ran back through the back door maybe 4 seconds behind it. I went through every room. Nothing was displaced. Nothing was broken. Della was asleep. The house was exactly as I'd left it. I stood in the kitchen in my soaked clothes and tried to get my breathing under control. And then, for a moment that lasted maybe 10 seconds, I couldn't remember why I'd ever wanted to leave Harlow. It wasn't a thought. It was the absence of one, like reaching for something that had always been there and finding empty air. I'd had a version of that want for as long as I could remember. Nothing dramatic, just that low hum of someday, of elsewhere, of more. And for those 10 seconds, it was simply gone. I panicked. Not loudly, not in a way I could explain to anyone, but deep in my chest where real fear lives. I made myself think about it deliberately, forced the shape of it back into my head. The highway out of town. The city 3 hours east where I'd gone to visit a cousin once and spent a weekend feeling like I could breathe differently. The version of myself that still existed somewhere that hadn't spent his whole life in Harlow. The want came back, but it was thinner, like a photograph that had been left in the sun. I called in sick the next day and spent it sitting with what I knew. The storms weren't weather, they were a schedule. Whatever that thing was, it had been walking this town every Tuesday for longer than I'd been alive, longer probably than anyone in Harlow had been alive. And it wasn't taking people, it wasn't leaving bodies, it was doing something quieter, trimming something small and invisible from each person it visited. Not enough to notice, not enough to hurt, just enough to sand down the edges. Keep people comfortable, keep people rooted, keep the town full. I thought about all the people I knew who'd had plans that went nowhere. My parents, who talked about retiring to the coast every year for a decade, and then 1 year just stopped talking about it and seemed fine with that. My old high school teacher who'd been finishing a novel for 15 years. Russ, who'd gotten a job offer in another city 4 years ago and turned it down for reasons he could never quite articulate. Della, who'd wanted to go back to school and just hadn't. And when I'd asked her about it recently, she'd looked at me like I was bringing up someone else's dream. I'd been visited too. That night in the kitchen was proof enough. And whatever it had taken enough. The following Thursday, I decided to leave. No planning, no announcement. I threw some clothes in a bag, told Della I needed to visit a friend out of town for a few days, and got in my truck. She kissed me goodbye and said to drive safe, and that was that. I made it to the highway. I made it past the town limits, past the grain elevator on the county road, past the water tower with the faded Harlow lettering on the side. The rain from the night before had left the road dark and reflective, and the fields on either side were still and grey in the early morning light. I drove for about 20 minutes, then I pulled over. I don't know why. There was no reason to stop. There was nothing wrong with the truck, nothing on the road. I just pulled onto the gravel shoulder and sat there with the engine running and stared at the flat open country ahead of me. I sat there for a long time. I told myself I'd leave in a few days, once things at work settled down. I told myself Della needed me right now. I told myself the timing was just bad, and there'd be a better window soon. And Harlow wasn't so terrible, and I had a good life here, and leaving was a bigger disruption than it was worth. I listened to myself say all of that, and I knew, somewhere underneath it, that none of it was really mine. Those were the smooth, well-worn grooves of someone who'd been trimmed down just enough, shaped into the right size for a town that needed to stay full. I drove back to Harlow. I pulled into my driveway as the sun was getting high. Della's car was gone. She'd left for work. The street was quiet. Chet's porch was empty. Everything looked exactly like it always had. I sat in the truck for a while. I thought about the figure in the rain. I thought about its face, or the place where its face should have been. I thought about how it had paused in front of my house that second week, like it had clocked me, like it had been watching me watch it and had decided to let me look, because it already knew it didn't matter. I could see it clearly. I could know exactly what it was, and it still didn't matter, because knowing isn't the same as leaving, and leaving isn't something I could do anymore. That's the part I keep coming back to. It didn't hide from me. It didn't chase me or threaten me or try to make me forget. It walked right past me in my own yard and went into my house and took what it came for. And the next morning, I was still here, and the morning after that, and every morning since. And it'll come again next Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that. And at some point, it'll visit me again, and I'll lose a little more of whatever's left, and I'll still be here. The worst part isn't the thing itself. The worst part is that Harlow is full of people who've been visited dozens of times, maybe hundreds, and they're all perfectly happy. They wake up on Wednesday mornings and make coffee and go to work and come home and sit on their porches, and they don't feel the absence of what was taken because they don't remember having it. Maybe that's where I'm headed. Maybe in a year, I won't remember writing this down. Maybe in 5 years, I'll be Chet, standing on my porch in the morning with that settled look on my face, telling some new neighbor that I thought about leaving once, but decided Harlow was home. I still feel it for now, that thin, sun-faded version of the want to go. I'm holding on to it the way you hold on to the last image of a dream, knowing it's already leaving. It's Tuesday again tonight. I can already smell the rain coming in.